Welcome to Money Talks. I'm Nancy Stark, and we are very happy to have you here today. It's February, and I am here with Deanna Booker.
Hey.
Dee is our own personal financial expert. We're so happy to have her.
Always call me that.
And she's also the Community Outreach and Communications Manager for Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Maryland and Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
Dee, tell us a little bit about what CCCS does.
We are a nonprofit counseling organization. We're here, and we have been here on the Eastern Shore since 1966, helping folks, offering all kinds of financial counseling. So credit counseling, budget counseling, which is so important, housing counseling, even bankruptcy counseling, anything, any kind of help, any kind of counseling or education that folks need to be able to further themselves along to financial security and being financially informed. That's what we're doing.
You guys are wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
And on that happy note, where it's February, we're near Valentine's Day, and love is in the air. But
Okay.
statistically, what I found out is while it's in the air, it doesn't always last.
This is true.
In fact, 1 out of every 3 to 5 marriages ends up in divorce.
That's right.
Now, from a financial point of view, why is that important?
Well, I think that's important because a lot of times when couples, they're just getting together, they're going in, they're married, they're not thinking about divorce. Nobody
Let's
is
hope not.
thinking that. So if or when the time comes that folks are going to separate, they're not prepared, for
They
how
haven't been thinking about that. This is how it's going to end up.
Exactly, for how it's going to impact them financially. And divorce is an emotionally charged kind of thing.
I think all of us can agree on that.
Yeah, but it can also be very expensive. Very expensive. I mean, you could be talking about tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Unless it's uncontested, in which case it's a little
in
bit
which
less.
case it's pretty cheap. But it can be very expensive. And again, if folks aren't prepared, if they don't have that, the information around it, it can have hugely detrimental effects. Now, going back to when, they were first together and nobody was thinking about it, there's an old adage that says 2 can live as cheaply as 1.
We all hear that.
Right, and there's definitely some truth to that, It makes a difference if 2 people are handling the day-to-day expenses and maintaining the home and that kind of thing. But again, doesn't always happen that way. And if folks aren't prepared, it can really be disastrous.
So if you end up on your own, it can be a real rude awakening from a financial point of view.
Really.
I can remember back to when we were first married, and I remember now, and it's a good marriage and stuff. It's hard to want to even think about topics like death or divorce.
Yeah.
Why is it so necessary for us to do it when our relationships are still healthy?
Right. I think that's the time, because doing it then might save you, might help you avoid some of those relationship pitfalls. If you're having open and honest talks about family finances and everybody's involved and things are on the table and you know how things are being handled, that might help you avoid some trouble. Because to go to your statistic that you named earlier, a lot of those folks, those 1 in 3 or whatever it was, a lot of them say that arguments about money really contributed, or was a lot of times the sole reason.
The reason they got divorced.
Exactly, why the relationship broke up. So if you do it beforehand, maybe you can avoid that. But the other side of it is, just because you don't talk about it doesn't make you, doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. So ignoring divorce doesn't make you divorce proof. How about that? So I think that talk and those conversations have to happen. Again, it might help you avoid some of those problems.
When people go through something like divorce, and it can even be something like death, where people end up and their marital status changes, they're now living on their own.
Exactly.
How does that affect you financially?
I think it has really lasting and really, really meaningful, impacts. Going from being married to being single, I think can impact you in a lot of ways. But I could think of a few. One, it's really going to impact your assets.
Right.
Obviously, exactly. And especially in the case of divorce, if we're talking about how things are going to be divided up and who's going to get what and that kind of thing, it really can have an impact on assets.
And how much you end up with.
How much you end up with or without,
Right.
The other thing, I think, is standard of living. And this is really true, I think, when it comes to women. A lot of the times, if our partner, our husband, our spouse has, had everything, maybe we didn't know.
They were the ones that controlled the money. They also were the ones that had the job.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. So I think standard of living, going from how I've been living this way to now I'm going to have to support myself, and what's that going to mean it can have an impact that way. And the other way, I think another major way that it can impact you is your credit. It can have a profound impact on your credit rating.
I've heard that before.
Yes. Oh,
yes. That your credit can go in the toilet when you end up divorced.
It can. It can.
With assets, if I'm already in I'm in a happy, healthy relationship right now, what should I be doing as far as with my assets to make sure that even if I'm not there 10 years from now, I still have them?
Right. I think it's about protection and also about understanding and knowing them. So I think it's a matter of laying everything out, looking at, all of the assets. What do we own? How much are things worth? Understanding, how it's really framed up and making sure that we have we've done a good assessment. We always talk about assessments. We've done a good assessment around where they all are, what everything's worth, all of that. Just to protect them, just so we know.
Maybe it's a good idea to sit down together, in fact.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Right? You want to sit down together and really weed through all of that information. Look at your ownership documents, pull that stuff out. Who's on what? What names are on what? Speaking of names, it's a good idea to make sure that both names are on joint property. So,
your house.
Exactly. The deed to your house, the titles to your car. Exactly. Right. You want to make sure that both spouses' names are on it. Because if your name isn't on an asset, you don't have any control over it. So it could be sold out from under you. Somebody could take a loan against it, and there's nothing you could do about it. So again, with an I, not that we want to have an I to divorce, but if that were to come up, that's something you need to know. So I think it's about, again, all of that goes towards the framework of understanding what the assets are and where they are and what they mean and how they're valued.
So you already have that information on hand in the case of the worst happens.
That's exactly
the worst
right.
has happened, and we're now getting ready to maybe go through a divorce. What do we need to look at as far as assets at that point?
Then is the time, again, for both parties to get together. And this is where we're going to have to try to rise above some of the emotion.
That's a hard thing to do.
And of course, that's easier to say and harder to do. But I think it's necessary because what you've got to do now is make an equitable arrangement and an equitable agreement, a settlement, exactly, around your assets. So now it's time, again, to go over the documents. Maybe get a summary plan from your employer, laying out, the 401ks.
Your retirement, how it works.
Exactly, because all of that's going to come into place, your retirements, your pensions, your investments, 401ks, that kind of thing. You really have got to take a look at all of those records when you're trying to make that settlement, again, so it can be equitable. And you have to understand, especially with those kind of what we call long-term assets, 401ks, that kind of thing, different assets have different levels of liquidity.
That's true.
So it's
I can
different.
Imagine that.
Yeah, having $50,000 in a 401k means something very different than having $50,000 in a CD or a money market account. So you've got to understand that, and everybody has to have a good perspective, around what it means and how those assets are going to be divided and when and for how long, all of that.
And you shouldn't just be looking at the here and now. You need to be looking down the road as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that leads us into talking about standard of living. It's funny, when you talk to people that have gone through a divorce, and I can even say this from my own past experience, it's a rare situation where either partner ends up with more money in their pocket after a divorce.
That's right.
What can we do now if we're still in a good relationship, if we've just started out? What can we do to make sure that our standard of living is going to be maintained, whether we're together or we're alone?
I think the biggest thing about that for right now is having a full understanding of what your family finances are. So looking at everything, do I know, if somebody asked you right now, somebody came up to you right now and said, tell me what your family's income, debts, investments, and assets are. Could you do that? And if you can't,
that's a good question.
If you can't, and no matter what spouse you are, if you can't do that, then you need to get that information. Because again, even if you're in a happy, healthy relationship, or if we're talking about a relationship coming to an end, that's information you need to have just for general, positive.
So that you know.
Exactly, so that you know. So I think that's a big part of it. You got to have that information. Now, even if you have always left the handling of the money or the paying of the bills, if you've always left that to your partner, that's fine. But again, you need to have some information around it. So make sure that you're a part of you make a contribution to the decisions that are made financially in your household or
You
for your
shouldn't
family.
just be sitting back.
Yeah, you shouldn't just abdicate, your responsibility totally. You've got to have some say in it so you keep abreast of what's happening. You understand your family finances. Also, I think you're making a contribution to that. In another way, you should be making a contribution to something else, a savings account that's in your name. That's
strictly yours.
Sure, that you're building up a little nest egg because there's always those 3 little words, just in case, you don't know. I would also talk about it from an employment perspective. If you're working, do as much as you can to make sure that you're being paid what you're worth. So
go and ask for that raise each year.
right. Look at opportunities for advancement. And again, that applies no matter the relationship you're in. That's just for personal development. Exactly right. If we've been out of the workplace, maybe we step back from the workplace to raise a family.
Take care of our families.
Exactly. Right. Keep your contacts up. Keep networking. Make sure your skills stay current, because just in case. And again, even if your relationship doesn't go bad, there may just come a time where you want to go back into the workforce. Those kinds of things are going to help you stay marketable. And that goes to your standard of living, being as high as it can be.
Yeah, keeping it and maintaining it, maybe even building it as far as that goes.
Exactly right.
Well, say we've gone past that point of no return and we're looking at a divorce. What can you do to protect your quality of life?
I think at that point you might want to talk about getting some legal help. Around understanding the situation and what you're going to do. And for folks who can't afford it, there are places, here on the Eastern Shore, Legal Aid Bureau, offering free, low-cost legal advice. So I think at that point you want to get an attorney.
Like from the point of view of maybe a settlement, making sure that you get everything that you deserve.
Exactly, that's exactly right. Yeah. Because if you're seeing, wow, I'm going to be worse off. If you've got your budget and you've got everything laid out and you're looking at it in black and white and you can tell that, maybe this isn't going to go so well for me.
Especially if your partner has hidden assets or is holding all of the cards in a way.
Right, in a way. And so you've got to do what you have to do to protect yourself. And so I think at that point, you really might want to get some legal advice around how to maneuver. If now you are responsible for, especially, again, going back to women and moms, if the children are with you, maybe if you're not getting the kind of support that you need, that kind of thing, maybe you can't make the mortgage payment on your own now, that kind of thing. So it really is going to come down to understanding your personal financial standing, your personal financial situation, doing that assessment to see where you are and where you're going to be.
You may not be able to buy that new wardrobe to redefine who you are.
Absolutely.
You may have to look for ways of cutting your expenses or finding other additional income.
That's exactly
to
right.
make it work.
That's exactly right.
But in the case that doesn't happen, is there help out there as far as in helping you look further at your financial options?
Absolutely. And I think if you're in that situation, if you've done everything and still it's not really working, it's not really coming together, that's the time that you need to get help. You can't wait any longer. And there is help out there. You need to talk to a reputable credit counseling organization like Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Maryland and Delaware, where a counselor is going to work with you to do that financial assessment, to understand what your budget looks like, what your income is. Like you said, you've maybe economized, but maybe in talking with the counselor, we can help you with some other things. We can help you around options for increasing your income, how you're going to handle all the bills, the mortgage and everything. All of that kind of work needs to go into assessing your financial situation.
You may even have suggestions for support services that I could apply for.
Absolutely. Right. If there are other, our partners or, again, other community organizations that can help you, we're going to make those referrals. We're going to do that kind of comprehensive counseling with and for you to make it so you're able to come through this situation as best as possible. Absolutely.
How do they contact you?
They can call our toll-free number. It's 1-800-642-2227 to schedule an appointment. When the appointment is made, they're going to let the person know exactly what they need to bring with them. The counselor's going to need information about your income, your expenses, all of that kind of thing. And during the session, we're gonna do that work and we're going to help as much as we can.
And I understand that sessions can take place at an office, like here in Salisbury, or it could even take place on the phone.
Exactly. We have have staggered hours for our face-to-face counseling sessions for our offices, like you said, in Salisbury or in Easton, and we also have evening hours on the phone. We're on the phones up until 9 p.m. every night, Monday through Thursday, for folks who can't get to the office. So we try to make it as convenient as possible.
And how much does it cost?
It doesn't cost 1
Oh,
cent.
that's wonderful.
It's absolutely
That's
free,
the best
and
news.
it's absolutely confidential.
That's
Absolutely.
wonderful. When you don't have enough money, a lot of times what happens is you get behind on your mortgage. I understand that we have a letter that relates directly to this issue, and I'd love for you to share it with us.
I do. I did bring this. I wanted to share because you mentioned to me that you were thinking about discussing this, and this lady wrote to me, and it stuck with me because it speaks to a lot of what's going on. What she writes is, Deanna, when my husband left our family last year, he left me and our 3 children living in the home we've had for the past 10 years, and he said he'd continue to pay the mortgage. At first, I considered this a blessing, given it meant our children wouldn't have to change schools or move out of the neighborhood that we've grown to know and love. But about 9 months ago, I was contacted by our mortgage company. They said my husband had stopped making the payments on the mortgage and that we were now 3 months behind. I immediately tried to contact my husband, who now lives out of state, but with no response. Since then, I've tried to make up what we owe, but I don't earn enough to pay back the difference or even to keep our mortgage current. I'm so worried we'll receive a foreclosure notice before long. What can I do?
Boy, that's a harrowing story.
It's so sad.
It is sad. This letter shows that here in Maryland, it's still definitely a concern.
Still happening. Still happening.
Absolutely. With that said, what can local residents do to help avoid foreclosure?
The main thing is to not wait. You know, to not
to
wait.
deal with it.
To deal with it. Exactly.
Right.
To deal with it. That's exactly it. Not waiting to get help. Learning all about learning as much as you can about what foreclosure means and how it works, and then getting some help. Not waiting. Dealing with it straight away.
Yeah, that's a hard road to hoe.
It's hard. It's hard to do, but I think that it's the first step. It has to be.
What are the laws and timeframes that govern foreclosure?
Foreclosure isn't going to happen immediately when you miss a payment.
That's a good thing to know.
It's something good to know because a lot of times folks are scared of that. It's not. Lenders usually aren't going to file for foreclosure until a borrower is somewhere around 60 or 90 days late. So we're talking about 2 or 3 months or so. The first thing that is going to happen is that a notice of default is going to be recorded with the county recorder's office, and it's going to be sent to you.
You're going to get at least know about it.
You're going to get it. Exactly. You're going to, and that's a point to make throughout this. You're going to get notification all throughout this process. There's always going to be a letter, coming in the mail about something. So that notice of default is going to go out. Then the lenders they have to file what we call an NOI, or notice of intent, and they have to do that about 45 days before the foreclosure filing is put in. So again, some more notification. You're going to know. You're going to find out. Really, though, what I'm getting to, so those are the time frames. Those are kind of the major markers.
The milestones.
Exactly, around what's happening. But the best way to handle it is to try to get out in front of it before any of that happens. The
earlier the better.
Exactly. When that notice of default comes, that's kind of kicking off the process. You want to be out in front of it before that ever happens.
When mortgage providers start calling or sending me letters, I think what I would maybe want to do is get back in bed, put the covers over my head, and not deal with it. Is that a good plan of action?
No.
I thought you'd say that somehow.
It's tempting, just because it can be very stressful.
Right.
It's a very stressful thing, and it's tempting to just ignore it. And like you said, to kind of bury our heads in the sand and just hope that it'll go away. But it's not. And honestly, ignoring it is probably going to make the situation worse. The best thing to do is take action. So you want to start by pulling out your loan documents. Get all of that stuff out and read them. Understand them, because contained in those documents is everything that your lender is going to be able to do if you miss payments or when you miss payments, but also
what your responsibilities and rights are.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Reviewing those documents is going to give you some understanding about what things are going to mean for you. The other point I want to make, since you mentioned that, folks will just want to cover their heads up.
Right.
Open your mail. I can't tell you how many folks I've talked to that are living in this situation that just the letters are piling up. They just throw them on the side when they come in. Open the mail. Everything that your lender sends to you, open it, read it, respond to it. Early on in the process, the kind of correspondence that your lender is going to be sending is going to include probably some options. That's when they're going to be saying, okay, you could be facing foreclosure, but you could do this or do this or do this.
They're going to be opportunities.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Some opportunities, some options. Later on, the correspondence is going to get decidedly more, right, decidedly less friendly. That's when they're going to be talking about legal action. And you need to know that kind of thing too, but if you had opened the mail early, you might have been able to get some other things going on. So I really want to make that point. Open up your mail.
Right. And you probably want to keep a log of when you actually talk to
That's a great idea.
To your mortgage provider as well.
Exactly.
So that you keep a record of sort
who
of
you talk to, names, when, times, what they said. That's a
get
great
used to
idea.
Doing that on a regular basis.
That's a great idea. Absolutely.
You also can get some other help, I think.
Help from a reputable HUD-approved housing counseling agency.
Indeed, I am.
Like Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Maryland and Delaware. Because again, like we said earlier, you don't want to wait. You want to get help as soon as possible. And you want to get it from a HUD-approved agency.
And why is it important to get it from a HUD-approved agency as opposed to, say, a company that's, advertising on TV?
Mainly, I'll say, number one, because a HUD-approved agency, you are guaranteed that you're talking to reputable, accredited, qualified housing counselors. They're going to be able to give you the kind of advice, the reputable, sound, strong, solid advice around, your equity situation and your options and all of this kind of thing. The counseling is confidential. It costs much less.
So how much does it cost at CCCS?
It doesn't cost anything.
Oh, that's
it doesn't
wonderful.
cost anything. The counseling is completely free. So you just want to make sure, again, that you're talking with counselors from an organization that's HUD approved. The counselors are certified, so you can be assured that you're getting the best possible advice.
That makes full sense.
We think so.
So if I come to a housing counselor at CCCS for mortgage foreclosure prevention counseling, I know that there's probably going to be options we're going to look at. What else is going to happen?
Well, it's again another time for that assessment. So the counselor is going to fully assess where you are financially. They are going to discuss options. They're going to talk to you about the equity in your home and what kind of things are going to be best suited for you and what kind of programs are available and all of that. It really is going to be fully comprehensive around what your personal financial situation is, what the situation around your mortgage is, and how those two things correlate and what's the best way to handle both of them.
Oh, that's good. Well, why don't we take a few minutes and look at some of the options that are available to people when it comes to avoiding foreclosure. I know one of them is traditional modification. What exactly is that?
Well, traditional modification is where the lender agrees to change or modify one aspect of your mortgage, so one term or another. So maybe the payment's going to be extended, or maybe the interest rate is going to be adjusted. Maybe, the late payments are going to be, or the missed payments are going to be capitalized, that kind of thing. Something about the loan is going to be changed to make it more affordable and more stable for you to be able to manage.
A lot of times what we hear about are HAMPs. What exactly is a HAMP?
HAMP is an acronym, and it stands for Home Affordable Modification Program. HAMP is offered through the Making Home Affordable program, that federal program, and it's around loans, geared to loans that are guaranteed by Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae. For a HAMP, to qualify for a HAMP though, you have got to be able to prove that you have a very strong and very justifiable reason for needing a modification. So that's a big point about HAMP.
What do you get out of it if you qualify?
Again, you get a loan that's more stable, that's more manageable for you. The interest rate may be lowered. The terms are going to be adjusted in some way to make it so you're able to pay that loan more affordably.
You might even get forbearance.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely, that's an option.
Now things are much better. I've got a new job. I'm starting to get more money in. Are there options available for me to get make things up so I avoid foreclosure?
Sure. In that sense, you may be able to do a repayment plan with your lender. If you're back on track now and you're back to work and things are looking good again, your lender may agree to a repayment plan where they're just going to add on, so to speak, the the arrearage. So if you, however much you're behind, your regular mortgage payment was X, but now it's going to be X plus $250 every month
until
it's paid off. Now the thing about that is, if you make that arrangement, and if your lender agrees to it, you have to stick to it. If you default on that arrangement, then your lender's not going to be willing, honestly, to help you again in the future. So it really is about sticking to any repayment plan that you're able to make.
Promises.
Exactly, keeping your promises. Exactly right.
Traditional refinancing a possibility as well?
It is. It is a possibility, depending on what your situation is, how much equity you've got in your home, what your credit rating is like. You may be able to qualify for a traditional refinance. I say may.
Say you're up to date on your mortgage, but you're worried, and you want to refinance, but you can't refinance because your house is suddenly, it's gone underwater due to the loss of equity in it.
Right.
What options are available then?
In a situation like that, you might be able to refinance under the HARP program, which is also through Making Home Affordable. To qualify for HARP, your loan has to be guaranteed by Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae. But if you're able to qualify through HARP, you are going to be left with purposely a more secure, more stable, more manageable loan. So HARP would be something to look into in that
That's good
situation.
news if you can do that. Okay, let's turn the tables again. At this point, we've gone past those early parts of the process, and we're now really facing foreclosure. What options are available then?
Well, the quickest option would be reinstatement. That
sounds great.
Yeah, that's really easy to say, but harder to do, though, because what I mean by reinstatement is paying back all of the monies that you owe to the lender. So that means
one lump sum.
In one lump sum.
Oh.
So that means payments and fees and charges and penalties.
All of it.
All of it. All of it. It's the quickest way to get things back on board, but it's a lot of money. You're talking about a lot of money. Now, if it's tax time, or if you got a bonus,
got a refund?
Yeah, you got a big refund, or you got a bonus at work, or you got some inheritance or something, you could maybe do that. You could maybe do that. So that's one option. The other option is bankruptcy. Filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy halts the foreclosure process.
That would be good.
That would be good, but here's a little caveat to that. It's not a good idea if you can't afford the payments once the bankruptcy is discharged. They call it post-petition payments. Once you're discharged from a Chapter 13, you have to resume making those post-petition payments.
And if you can't, you're going to lose the house anyway.
You're going to lose the house anyway. If you couldn't afford the payments before, you come out of bankruptcy and you can't afford them again, you're going to lose the house anyway. So again, if you're going to file bankruptcy, you really have to have a good understanding of what it entails.
You're in that situation, but you do not want to have a foreclosure. You want to avoid foreclosure. What options are available then?
In that situation, you might be able to do a deed in lieu of foreclosure. That's where the lender is going to agree. You're going to be allowed to deed the house back, basically.
So here it is, take it back.
Here it is. But you're going to avoid foreclosure, and that's something that the lender would allow you to do. The other option in that case, in a situation like that, would be a short sale. That's where the lender is going to allow you to recruit a realtor, basically, and you are going to be allowed to sell your home, even if you sell it for less than you owe, even if the purchase price is for less than what you still owe outstanding. And again, they're going to allow you to do that, and you'll be able to avoid foreclosure.
Why would they let you do that?
When a lender, goes through the foreclosure process, it costs them something too. So doing it that way saves them the time and the work and the effort and the money on going through with a foreclosure.
Well, Deanna, we covered so many options. I never realized there were so many to choose from. It's good that there are.
There are.
We're at the end of our program.
Already?
I can't believe it.
Oh my goodness, I'm just getting comfortable.
Yeah, same here. It's always a lot of fun to have you. And it goes so fast.
It does.
Before we leave, could you give us one more time how to reach CCCS and tell us a little more about some of the resources?
If folks need to call us, they're interested in housing counseling, they can call our toll-free line. It's 1-866-731-8486. Or they can visit our website, www.cccs-inc.org. On the site, we have all sorts of information, so many resources. We've just developed a new e-learning course. It's about foreclosure prevention.
That's great.
Absolutely. There's all kinds of things, again, because it's all connected. So those personal budget worksheets are there, all kinds of interactive